The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. "You're a failure, Dad. Mum's new husband is better than you ever were." My daughter Sarah said it right there at Applebee's over her chicken Caesar salad, like she was commenting on the weather. 24 years old, my little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm 72 years old, and I live alone in a small ranch house in Cedar Falls, Iowa. Same house where Sarah grew up, where her mother Linda and I raised her for 18 years before the divorce tore everything apart. That was 6 years ago now. 6 long years of trying to rebuild something that maybe was never as strong as I thought it was. I wake up every morning at 6 a.m. Old habits. Used to be because I had to get to the grain elevator by 7. Worked there 43 years, started right after high school. Worked my way up to shift supervisor. Good honest work. Dirty hands, clean conscience, my father used to say. He worked the same job before me. These days I wake up early because, well, what else am I going to do? Sleep until noon? I make my coffee in the same Mr. Coffee machine Linda bought in 1987. Still works fine. Toast 2 pieces of white bread. Butter them, eat them standing at the kitchen counter looking out at the bird feeder I built for Linda back when she still lived here. The cardinals come first, bright red flashes against the oak tree. Then the chickadees, chattering like old ladies at church. Linda loved those birds. Said watching them helped her feel peaceful. I keep filling the feeder because, I don't know, maybe she can see them somehow. Sarah calls me every few weeks. Usually on Sunday afternoons. "Just checking in, Dad." Her voice always sounds different now. Careful, like she's talking to a stranger who might say something embarrassing, which I suppose is exactly how she sees me. The lunch invitation surprised me. "Want to meet at Applebee's tomorrow?" "Just us?" she asked. I said yes before she finished the question. When was the last time my daughter wanted to spend time with just me? Had to be Christmas, and that was a disaster. Her new stepfather, Derek, making jokes about my old truck. Sarah laughing along, choosing sides. I got to the restaurant 15 minutes early. Sat in my truck rehearsing what I might say, how I might bridge this gap that kept getting wider between us. Maybe I could ask about her job at the insurance office. Or that boyfriend she mentioned, the one studying to be a physical therapist. Safe topics. Neutral ground. She walked in wearing a black business suit that made her look older, more serious. My Sarah used to wear jeans with holes in the knees and oversized sweaters. This woman looked like she was heading to a board meeting. "Hi, Dad." She hugged me, but it was one of those quick, obligatory hugs. The kind you give your mailman at Christmas. We ordered our food. Made small talk about the weather, about how busy she was at work. I told her about fixing the leak in my bathroom sink, about Mrs. Henderson next door bringing me a casserole because she made too much. Normal stuff. Daughter and father stuff. Then the conversation turned. "Dad, I've been thinking a lot about things. About the divorce. About how you handled everything." My chest tightened. Here it comes, I thought. The conversation I'd been dreading for 6 years. "I know it was hard on all of us," I said carefully. "But your mother and I, we just couldn't make it work anymore. You know that." Sarah set down her fork, looked at me with eyes that reminded me so much of Linda's. It hurt. "That's just it, Dad. You didn't try to make it work. You just gave up." The words stung because they carried truth I didn't want to examine too closely. Had I given up? Those last 2 years of marriage, walking around that house like ghosts, barely speaking except about bills and schedules and whose turn it was to fix the garbage disposal. It wasn't that simple, honey, wasn't it? Her voice was getting sharper now. "Mom tells me everything, Dad, how you stopped talking to her. How you'd come home from work and just sit in that damn recliner watching TV until bedtime. How you never wanted to go anywhere or do anything." I felt heat rising in my cheeks. This wasn't how I'd imagined this lunch going. "Your mother has her version of events," I said quietly. "I have mine. And what's your version? That she was the problem? That she asked too much of you?" The anger in her voice was familiar. It was the same tone Linda used during those last months. Sharp and frustrated and tired of me before I even opened my mouth. "Sarah, I worked 50 hours a week to keep a roof over our heads. I paid for your piano lessons and your basketball camps and your college tuition. I showed up. Every damn day I showed up. Showing up isn't the same as being present, Dad. That phrase. Being present. Derek's language. Derek, the insurance executive who took Linda to wine tastings and cooking classes. Derek, who remembered anniversaries and planned surprise weekend trips. Let me guess, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. Derek taught you that phrase. Sarah's face flushed. Derek has been more of a father to me in the last 2 years than you were in my entire childhood. The words hung between us like smoke from a house fire. Toxic and choking. Sarah. No, Dad, I'm tired of pretending. Derek asks about my life. He remembers things I tell him. He comes to my work events. When I graduated from my real estate classes last month, he was there with flowers and a card. You didn't even know I was taking classes. She was right, and that made it worse. I didn't know about the real estate classes. I didn't know she'd graduated from anything. When had I stopped paying attention to the details of my daughter's life? I'm sorry, I said. I should have asked more questions. Should have stayed in touch better. It's too late for should-haves, Dad. Sarah leaned back in her booth, studying me like I was a problem she was trying to solve. You want to know what Mom told me last week? She said the best day of her life was when she realized she didn't have to live with your disappointment anymore. My disappointment. As if everything that went wrong was something I'd done to them, instead of life just being hard sometimes. I never meant to disappoint anyone. But you did, every single day. You disappointed Mom by being emotionally unavailable. You disappointed me by choosing work over family. You disappointed yourself by settling for mediocrity. Each word was a knife thrust, delivered with surgical precision. This wasn't my little girl anymore. This was a woman who'd learned how to weaponize her words. Sarah, that's not fair. Fair! She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been having a father who cared enough to fight for his marriage. Fair would have been having a father who didn't give up the minute things got difficult. I stared at my half-eaten burger, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't a reconciliation lunch. This was an execution. Derek makes Mom laugh, Sarah continued. Do you remember the last time you made Mom laugh? Because I don't. Derek plans things. Derek remembers birthdays without being reminded. Derek shows up to family events with gifts and stories and enthusiasm for life. I'm not Derek. No, you're not. Derek succeeded where you failed. In business, in relationships, in being a man worth respecting. The restaurant noise faded to background static. Other diners talking and laughing and living their lives, while mine collapsed at table 12. You're a failure, Dad. Mom's new husband is better than you ever were. She said it matter-of-factly, like she was reading from a grocery list. No anger now, just cold assessment. I set my napkin on the table, stood up slowly, my knees protesting after sitting too long. Where are you going? Sarah asked. Home. Dad, sit down. We're not done talking, but I was done. Done listening to my daughter catalog my inadequacies. Done pretending this lunch was about anything other than her need to punish me for not being the father she'd apparently wanted. Yes, we are done. I pulled out my wallet, left $40 on the table. More than enough to cover both meals and the tip. Dad, don't be dramatic. Dramatic. Another Derek word, probably. I looked at my daughter one last time. This stranger wearing Sarah's face, speaking with Sarah's voice, but saying things my little girl would never say. When you figure out who you really are, I said quietly, instead of who Derek thinks you should be, you know where to find me. I walked out of that Applebee's and didn't look back. Got in my truck and drove home through tears I hadn't shed since Linda moved out. That was 3 days ago. This morning, Sarah's number appeared on my caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. Dad, I think we need to talk about your reaction at lunch. Derek thinks you might be struggling with some emotional issues, and there are resources available for people your age. Call me back. I deleted the message without finishing it. Then I did something I'd never done before in my life. I changed my phone number. 43 years of the same number, but I drove to the Verizon store and got a new one. The young clerk asked if I wanted to keep my old number as a backup. No, I said. I want it gone completely. That afternoon, I sat down at my kitchen table with a pen and paper. Made a list of every person I wanted to have my new number. Mrs. Henderson, my brother Tom in Arizona, my old supervisor from the grain elevator, my doctor. Sarah's name didn't make the list. Some people might think I overreacted, that I should have been the bigger person, the understanding father who absorbs his daughter's cruelty and comes back for more. But I'm 72 years old, and I don't have time left to waste on people who think I'm a failure, even if one of those people is my own daughter. Especially if one of those people is my own daughter. The silence in my house felt different now. Not empty, peaceful, like the quiet after a storm passes through. I spent the next few days learning how to live with my decision. Mornings were easier. No more wondering if the phone would ring with Sarah's voice, carefully modulated to sound loving while delivering another evaluation of my failures. No more bracing myself for conversations that left me feeling smaller. Mrs. Henderson knocked on Tuesday afternoon. I was in my garage, organizing tools I hadn't touched since Linda moved out. "Bob, you okay over there? Haven't seen you much lately." Grace Henderson, 74 years old, widow for 8 years. We'd been neighbors for 23 years. She brought me that casserole after Linda left, and another one when I had pneumonia 2 winters ago. "I'm fine, Grace, just doing some cleaning." She studied me with eyes that had raised 6 children and knew when someone was avoiding the truth. "That daughter of yours been by lately?" Something in her tone made me look up from the toolbox I was pretending to sort. "Not recently, no," Grace nodded slowly. "Saw her here Sunday morning, before church. She was with that man, the fancy one, Derek. Sarah had brought Derek to my house. While I was at the hardware store buying weather stripping. They went inside. Had keys, looked like. Spent about 20 minutes in there. Came out carrying boxes." My chest tightened. "Boxes?" 2 of them. Not big, but heavy enough that the man had to help her carry them to the car. I set down my socket wrench. Tried to keep my voice steady. "Thanks for telling me, Grace." "Bob, I don't like to meddle in family business, but that felt wrong to me. Going into someone's house while they're not home, taking things, wrong." After she left, I went inside and started checking. The house looked the same at first glance, but I knew every corner of this place, every item Linda and I had accumulated over 26 years of marriage. The wedding photo from our mantel was gone, the good silver from the dining room hutch, Linda's jewelry box from the bedroom dresser, the one I'd told Sarah she could have someday when I was gone. But the real violation was in my study, the filing cabinet where I kept important papers. The lock had been picked or forced. Documents scattered, then restacked carelessly. Someone had been looking for something specific. My hands shook as I checked the contents. Birth certificates, insurance policies, the deed to the house. All there, but not in the order I'd left them. The bank statements were missing. 3 months' worth of statements from my checking and savings accounts. I called First National immediately. "Mr. Mitchell, I show that Sarah Mitchell was added as a joint account holder on your checking account last month. She provided proper identification and said you'd discussed it." The room spun slightly. "I never authorized that. Sir, your signature is on the paperwork. Notarized and witnessed." They scanned the documents to my email while I waited on hold. When I opened the file, I saw my name signed in handwriting that looked close to mine, but wasn't quite right. The R in Robert was wrong, too angular. Sarah had practiced my signature, but not perfectly. "I need to speak to someone about fraud." The fraud investigator could see me Thursday morning. In the meantime, they froze the account and flagged any further activity. Wednesday night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Sarah's words at lunch. "Derek has been more of a father to me than you ever were." How long had they been planning this? How long had my daughter been seeing me as nothing more than an obstacle to whatever Derek had convinced her she deserved? The phone rang at 11 p.m., unknown number. "Dad." Sarah's voice, but different, strained. "How did you get this number?" "Dad, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding about you forging my signature to access my bank account." Silence, long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. "Derek said you'd probably try to make this into something criminal." Derek said. Derek thinks. "Jesus Christ, Sarah, do you have any thoughts of your own anymore? Don't take that tone with me. I'll take whatever tone I want." It's my phone, my house, my life that you're trying to steal. We're not stealing anything. We're protecting your assets from poor financial decisions." The words came out so smooth, so rehearsed, that I knew she'd practiced this conversation, probably with Derek coaching her. Poor financial decisions like what? Like living alone in a house that's too big for you. Like refusing to consider assisted living options. Like being too proud to accept help from people who care about you. There it was again. Derek's language. Derek's logic. And Derek cares about me, does he? He cares about our family's future. About making sure you're taken care of properly. By stealing my money. By managing your finances responsibly before you make mistakes you can't fix. I sat in Linda's old recliner, staring at the empty spot on the mantel where our wedding photo used to be. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Dad, I understand you're upset, but no, you listen." Something in my voice must have gotten through to her because she went quiet. I worked 53 years to build what I have. I never missed a mortgage payment, never defaulted on a loan, never declared bankruptcy or asked anyone else to pay my bills. I raised you and your brother with Linda in this house. I paid for your college education and your wedding. I've managed my own finances since I was 18 years old. Dad, I'm not finished. You want to talk about family? Family doesn't sneak into your house and steal your belongings. Family doesn't forge signatures on bank documents. Family doesn't lie to investigators about having permission. My voice was getting louder, but I couldn't stop. Derek isn't family, Sarah. Derek is a predator who saw an old man with some assets and a daughter weak enough to be manipulated into betraying her own father. That's not true, isn't it? When did you start thinking I was incompetent? Before or after Derek started whispering in your ear about how much my house is worth? You're being paranoid. Am I? Then explain why you're calling from an unknown number. Explain why you took my wedding photo and your mother's jewelry. Explain why you forged my signature instead of asking me directly for help with whatever financial problems Derek has gotten you into. Another long silence. We just want what's best for you, Dad. No, you want what's best for Derek. There's a difference. I'm trying to help you by stealing from me, by protecting you from yourself. The conversation was going in circles. Sarah had been programmed to say these things, to believe them, to defend actions that 6 months ago would have horrified her. Sarah, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to think about your answer before you give it to me. Okay. If your mother was still alive, would you be doing this to me? The question hung between us like a test neither of us wanted to take. Mom's not here anymore, Dad. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give you. Then we don't have anything more to talk about. I hung up before she could respond, before Derek could feed her more lines to recite. Thursday morning at the bank felt like a funeral for the daughter I thought I'd raised. Sarah Mitchell had been removed from my accounts. New security protocols established. A fraud investigation opened that could result in criminal charges. Your daughter seems to have used the joint account access primarily for cash withdrawals, the investigator explained. Approximately $8,000 over the past month. $8,000. More than my pension paid me in 6 months. Any idea what she might have needed that money for? I thought about Derek's expensive suits, his leased BMW, the way he'd talked about investment opportunities and business ventures during the few family gatherings before the divorce. Her husband has expensive tastes. The investigator nodded like he'd heard this story before. Family financial fraud is more common than people think. Often starts small, escalates when the perpetrator realizes how easy it is. Driving home, I passed Applebee's, saw the booth where Sarah had told me I was a failure. Wondered if she'd already planned the bank account fraud when she ordered her chicken Caesar salad. If the whole lunch had been theater, designed to justify what she and Derek were about to do. My answering machine was blinking when I got home. One message. Mr. Mitchell, this is Derek Carlisle. I think there's been a serious misunderstanding about the financial arrangements Sarah made to help protect your assets. I'd like to meet with you personally to clear this up. I'll be at your house this evening around 7. We need to resolve this situation before it gets out of hand. Not a request, not an apology. A demand delivered in the tone Derek probably used with his insurance clients when they questioned his recommendations. I erased the message and called Grace Henderson. Grace, if you see anyone at my house tonight after 6, would you mind calling the police? I'm expecting some unwelcome visitors. Of course, dear. Everything all right? It will be. At 6:45, Derek's BMW pulled into my driveway. Sarah got out of the passenger seat looking nervous. Derek strode toward my front door like he owned the place. I didn't answer their knock. Through the window, I watched Derek try the door handle. When it didn't turn, he walked around the house, checking for unlocked entrances. Sarah followed reluctantly, glancing back at the street like she was worried about neighbors watching. The doorbell rang 6 times. Then Derek started pounding on the door. Bob, open up. We need to talk like reasonable adults. I sat in Linda's chair, reading a magazine article about fishing in Montana. Somewhere I'd never been, but might like to visit. Maybe I'd use some of the money Sarah hadn't managed to steal yet. Derek's voice got louder, more demanding. Bob, this is ridiculous. We're trying to help you, and you're acting like a child. Through the window, I saw Grace Henderson walk across her yard toward my driveway. Saw her talking to Derek, gesturing back toward her house, probably telling him she'd called the police. Derek's face flushed red. He said something sharp to Grace, then grabbed Sarah's arm and pulled her back toward the car. They were gone when the police arrived 10 minutes later. Officer Martinez was young, probably Sarah's age, but he took notes seriously while I explained about the forged bank documents and tonight's attempted intimidation. You want to file harassment charges? Not yet, but I want this documented in case they come back. Smart thinking. Family disputes can escalate quickly when money's involved. After the police left, I poured myself 2 fingers of the whiskey Linda used to say was too expensive for everyday drinking. Seemed like tonight qualified as special. Grace knocked around 9, bringing a plate of cookies and curiosity. That man was very rude, she said, settling into Linda's chair. Told me to mind my own business when I asked what he was doing at your house. Derek doesn't understand boundaries. Is Sarah in some kind of trouble? I thought about how to answer that. How do you explain that your daughter had become someone you didn't recognize? She's made some poor choices lately. Trusted the wrong person. Grace nodded sagely. My daughter went through something similar. Married a man who convinced her that her family was holding her back. Took us 3 years to get her back. Did she come back? Eventually. After he'd spent all her money and moved on to someone else. But the trust, that took longer to rebuild. Grace left around 10. I sat alone in my living room, looking at the empty space where Linda's and my wedding photo used to be, wondering if Sarah would ever realize what she'd given up for a man who saw her as nothing more than access to her father's assets. My phone rang one more time that night. Sarah's number, the real one. I let it go to voicemail. Dad, Derek says if you don't cooperate, we'll have to take legal steps to protect ourselves. He knows lawyers who specialize in elder financial abuse cases. Please call me back so we can work this out. Elder financial abuse. They were going to claim I was the victim of financial abuse, probably by some imaginary caregiver or advisor. Use that claim to justify taking control of my assets for my own protection. It was elegant, in a sociopathic way. Turn their own crime into evidence of my incompetence. I made 2 phone calls. First to a lawyer I'd used for real estate transactions. Left a message requesting an appointment to discuss estate planning and asset protection. Second to my doctor. Scheduled a comprehensive medical and mental competency evaluation with detailed documentation of my cognitive function. If Derek wanted to play games with elder abuse allegations, he was going to find out that this particular elder was a lot more competent than he'd calculated. The war Sarah and Derek had started was about to become very expensive for both of them. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old coffee. Richard Steinberg had been practicing family law for 30 years. His gray hair and kind eyes reminded me of my father. Mr. Mitchell, what you're describing is called financial exploitation of the elderly. It's a felony in Iowa. He spread my bank documents across his mahogany desk. The forged signatures looked even more obvious under his office lights. Your daughter faces serious criminal charges if we pursue this. Are you prepared for that possibility? I stared at the evidence of Sarah's betrayal. My little girl, who used to make me Father's Day cards with crayon drawings of us fishing together. I'm prepared to protect myself. Good, because they're not going to make this easy. Richard was right. The next morning, Adult Protective Services knocked on my door. A tired-looking social worker named Janet Muller with a clipboard and suspicious eyes. Mr. Mitchell, we've received reports that you may be experiencing financial exploitation by a caregiver or advisor. I almost laughed. Derek's move, exactly as I'd predicted. Who filed the report? I can't discuss that, but we need to evaluate your living situation and financial management capacity. I invited her in. Showed her my clean house, organized bills, full refrigerator. Walked her through my monthly budget, my investment portfolio, my medical records. Sir, you seem very capable, but the complaint alleges that someone has been isolating you from family and manipulating your financial decisions. The only people manipulating my finances are the ones who filed this false report. Janet's expression shifted. She'd heard this story before. Mr. Mitchell, sometimes family members file APS reports as a legal strategy to establish grounds for guardianship or conservatorship. That's exactly what's happening here. I showed her the police report from Derek's harassment visit. The bank fraud documentation. Richard Steinberg's business card. I'm fighting back through proper legal channels. My daughter and her husband are the ones exploiting me financially. Janet spent 2 hours documenting everything. When she left, she looked angry. Mr. Mitchell, in my professional opinion, you're the victim here, not the perpetrator. I'll be filing a report that clears you completely and identifies the real source of financial abuse. That afternoon, Derek called from Sarah's phone. Bob, this has gone far enough. We're trying to protect you, and you're making it impossible. Protect me from what? From making financial mistakes you'll regret. From being taken advantage of by unscrupulous people like you. I'm a licensed insurance professional. I understand asset protection strategies you've never heard of. Derek's voice carried that condescending tone I'd grown to hate, like he was explaining simple concepts to a confused child. I managed my own assets just fine for 50 years before you showed up. The financial world has changed. Bob, you need professional guidance. I need you to stay out of my bank accounts. Look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Sarah has power of attorney papers drawn up. All we need is medical documentation that you're not competent to manage your own affairs. There it was, the real plan. And how exactly are you going to get that documentation? My insurance clients include several geriatric psychiatrists, professionals who understand how to assess elderly cognitive decline. Derek's voice carried confidence that made my blood run cold. He had doctors who would declare me incompetent for the right fee. Derek, let me explain something to you. I'm listening. I've already been evaluated by my own doctor. Comprehensive cognitive testing, mental competency assessment, the works. Documentation that I'm fully capable of managing my own affairs. Silence on the other end. Furthermore, Adult Protective Services investigated your false report and concluded that you and Sarah are the ones committing elder abuse. That's impossible. Check your mail tomorrow. You'll be receiving copies of their findings, along with criminal complaint paperwork from the county prosecutor's office. I heard Derek say something sharp to Sarah, then the line went dead. That evening, Grace Henderson came over with a casserole and gossip. Bob, I saw that fancy car parked across the street this afternoon. Just sitting there for hours. Derek's BMW. He'd been watching my house. Probably trying to figure out his next move. What kind of trouble is Sarah really in? I told Grace everything. The forged signatures, the theft, Derek's plan to have me declared incompetent. She listened with the expression of a woman who'd raised 6 children and recognized predatory behavior. That man's going to destroy your daughter. He already has. 3 days later, the prosecutor called. Mr. Mitchell, we've reviewed the evidence. Your daughter and her husband committed multiple felonies. Bank fraud, forgery, identity theft, elder financial abuse. We're prepared to file formal charges. My chest tightened. Once those charges were filed, there was no going back. What are we talking about in terms of penalties? Your daughter could face 2 to 5 years in prison. Her husband, as the apparent mastermind, could get 10 to 15 years. 10 to 15 years. Derek would be in his 50s when he got out. Sarah would be in her 30s, but with a felony record that would follow her forever. I need time to think about this. Mr. Mitchell, these people tried to steal your life savings. They forged legal documents. They filed false reports to have you declared incompetent. This isn't a family disagreement anymore. He was right, but she was still my daughter. That night, I sat in Linda's chair, staring at old photo albums. Sarah at 5, missing her front teeth, grinning at the camera. Sarah at 16, proud in her prom dress. Sarah at 22, college graduate, full of dreams and possibilities. When had I lost her? When had she become someone who could look me in the eye and steal from me? The answer came to me around midnight. I'd lost her the day she met Derek. Everything after that was just Derek slowly poisoning her against her own family, convincing her that her father was an obstacle to the life she deserved. My phone rang at 7 a.m., Sarah's number. "Dad?" Her voice was different, smaller, scared. "What do you want, Sarah?" "Derek's gone. He left last night. Took everything. My car, my credit cards, even my engagement ring." I closed my eyes. Grace Henderson's words echoing in my memory. "He'll spend all her money and move on to someone else." I'm sorry to hear that. Dad, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. The lawyer Derek hired says I could go to prison. That it's all my fault because the bank documents have my signature on them. You did sign them, Sarah. But Derek told me it was legal. He said you'd agreed to it. Even now, even after Derek had abandoned her, Sarah was still making excuses. Did you think I'd agreed to have my wedding photo stolen from my house? Silence. Did you think I'd agreed to have someone forge my signature on bank documents? Derek said you were getting confused, that you'd forgotten conversations we'd had. Sarah, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Okay. Derek lied to you. About everything. He never cared about protecting me or helping our family. He saw an old man with some assets and a daughter naive enough to help him steal them. I heard her crying. The same soft sobs I'd comforted when she was little and had nightmares. Dad, what am I going to do? For a moment, I almost weakened. Almost told her everything would be okay. That I'd fix this, like I'd fixed her broken toys and scraped knees when she was small. But she wasn't small anymore. She was 24 years old, and she'd chosen to betray me for a man who'd used her as a tool to commit crimes. You're going to face the consequences of your choices. Dad, please. I'm your daughter. No, Sarah, my daughter wouldn't have stolen from me. My daughter wouldn't have forged my signature on legal documents. My daughter wouldn't have brought a stranger into my house to take things that belonged to her mother. I made a mistake. You made a series of deliberate choices, each one designed to hurt me and benefit yourself. Can't you forgive me? The question hung between us like a bridge I had to decide whether to cross. Forgiveness and consequences are two different things. Sarah, I can forgive you for being foolish enough to trust Derek. I can't protect you from the legal penalties for the crimes you committed. So you're going to let me go to prison? I'm going to let justice take its course. I hung up before I could change my mind. The trial took place 6 months later. Sarah had hired a different lawyer, one who specialized in family financial crimes. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges in exchange for cooperation against Derek. Derek had been arrested in Phoenix, trying to run the same scam on an elderly widow named Mrs. Rodriguez. Apparently, I wasn't his first victim. I sat in the courtroom gallery, watching my daughter stand before the judge in an orange jumpsuit. She looked so young, so broken. Nothing like the confident woman who'd called me a failure over chicken Caesar salad. Sarah Mitchell, you've pleaded guilty to financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult and forgery. The court sentences you to 18 months in prison with possibility of parole after 12 months, 18 months. Sarah would be 26 when she got out. She turned toward the gallery before they led her away. Our eyes met for just a moment. I saw the little girl who used to ask me to check for monsters under her bed. But I also saw the woman who'd forged my signature and stolen my wedding photo. I nodded once. Not forgiveness exactly, but acknowledgement that she was still my daughter, even after everything. Derek got 8 years. He'd run this scam on 3 other elderly victims in different states. The prosecution called it a pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable seniors. After the sentencing, I drove to the cemetery where Linda was buried, sat on the bench beside her headstone, and told her everything that had happened. I did the right thing, didn't I? I asked the granite marker that bore her name. The wind through the oak trees sounded almost like an answer. 5 years have passed now. Sarah got out after 14 months and moved to Oregon. She sends me a Christmas card every year, but we don't talk. Maybe someday we will. Maybe not. Derek was released last month and immediately arrested for running the same scam on a retired teacher in California. Some people never learn. I'm 77 now, live alone in the same house where Sarah grew up. Grace Henderson checks on me twice a week, and her grandson Tommy cuts my grass in the summer. The money Sarah didn't manage to steal is still sitting in my bank account, earning modest interest. I've written a will leaving everything to the Cedar Falls Food Bank. When I'm gone, my assets will help feed hungry families instead of funding someone's selfish dreams. Sometimes people ask if I regret turning in my own daughter, if I should have found a way to protect her from the consequences of her choices. Here's what I learned. Love without boundaries isn't love. It's enabling. If you really care about someone, you don't let them destroy themselves by protecting them from every consequence. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let them face the truth about who they've become. Sarah had to lose everything, her freedom, her relationship with me, her future with Derek, before she could start building something real. I had to lose my daughter before I could find my self-respect. That's the hardest lesson of parenthood. Sometimes saving someone means letting them fall. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more true stories about family, consequences, and the difficult choices we all have to make. In the comments, rate this story from 0 to 10 and tell us about a time when you had to choose between family loyalty and doing what was right. Sometimes the people who claim to love us most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But that doesn't mean we have to accept the hurt. Sometimes walking away is the only way to save yourself. And sometimes it's the only way to save them too.